Hi everyone, it's Don and I hope you're having a fantastic day. We got lots of stories in the news today and a lot of stories involve Royal Caribbean and of course, what's going on in the world. First, before I get into the Royal Caribbean stories, let's talk about two other stories that have beginning to take effect that affect a lot of people. Cunard, the Queen Mary II, just arrived in New York, and they say that during routine testing on board, 10 passengers out of 2,200 passengers and crew have tested positive, and they will be isolating in New York City and following the protocols there. They were not discovered by people going and asking for tests, apparently. It was just routine testing on board. And all passengers on board had to be fully vaccinated and take a test before getting on board. So there's another story of another ship, and this time they have to isolate. And it's understandable why they would have to isolate, because it's a transatlantic cruise that just arrived in New York, so it's a lot further to fly. You can't always just hop on one of the smaller jets to fly across the ocean. So a lot of people will have to spend a little bit more time in New York City. So that's that first story. MSC also just announced they had to cancel, I think it's the MSC Magnifica, cruises all the way up until January 14th because of the new restrictions and shutdowns that are happening in Europe. For instance, Germany has started shutting down Christmas markets and places like that. A lot of the river cruises now have been canceled, and a lot of the apparently cruise ships, larger cruise ships, have to be canceled as well. We also have a case like in Scotland, where the pubs are now have to be closed by 8 o'clock at night. They're not allowed to serve alcohol after 8 o'clock at night. In, I believe it's Scotland or Ireland. Either way, I've never heard of that before in those countries, but there's so many restrictions starting to pop up that they ended up canceling the MSC Magnifica until at least January 14th. Now, I do have a couple of news stories, 3 as a matter of fact, about Royal Caribbean, and some questionable stuff, some good stuff maybe, and some bad stuff maybe. But before I get into that, let me just invite you to hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already, so you can keep up to date with all these news stories and everything going on in cruising, especially with what's happening right now and changes and protocols and switches around. It's nice to be informed so you know what's happening with your cruising adventure. Well, let's start off with the first one. Yesterday, I got a text message from some friends who were on the Odyssey of the Seas, and they said, starting in 1 hour from that time, smoking is no longer permitted in the casinos on Royal Caribbean. Now, Carnival Cruise Line had just announced that for some of their ships, and going forward, well, Royal Caribbean has now done the same thing. No smoking inside their cruise ship anywhere. Now, everything has to be done on the top decks in the smoking areas. That's another change that we kind of assumed might be coming, but during the pandemic, this is the first time that smoking has been banned as a precaution to COVID. So that's one. We also talked earlier this week about the 48 cases that were on the Symphony of the Seas when it came back. A 0.7 infection rate or something along those lines. Out of 6,000 people, there were 48 people who were infected. All of them asymptomatic, showing no signs. Nobody ended up in hospital. But another woman who claims that she was on the 6th day of that cruise, she reported, trying to report down to medical, saying that she started not feeling well and had a dry cough, and she couldn't get anybody to answer the phone. She says she waited until the next day. Finally, somebody answered, and they said, well, you're going to have to pay for a doctor's visit, and you're going to have to pay for a COVID test. And right away she said, no, that's not the process. if you suspect COVID on board, you're supposed to test the person, and you're supposed to cover the costs. Somebody did show up at the door and met with them, and apparently they took the temperature and said, oh, you're fine, you don't need to take a test. You can continue on with your cruise and continue enjoying the cruise. And the lady went, that's not right. I should be tested at minimum. I should be tested just to be sure. Apparently the lady got off the ship, went to a testing site, and both her and her daughter both tested positive at the testing site. Royal Caribbean has said they are looking into this incident because they said anybody on a cruise ship who says they have any kind of symptoms or signs of COVID should automatically be tested, no questions asked. And so they're looking into this incident to find out what happened, where the breakdown was, who did it, and I imagine there could be some people in a little bit of trouble because you definitely don't want any word out there getting out there that somebody came to you feeling sick on your ship and you said, you're okay, we don't need to test you. That would be very bad. That would be a very bad thing to come out in the news media. It's bad enough we're seeing cases again. It's bad enough the hysteria around cruise ships is still in full effect. We don't need that sort of bad press. And then finally, speaking of testing, well, I got rather angry a few weeks back with Celebrity Cruise Lines when I found out they were going to stop testing Canadians. And it was kind of a surprise to us. They didn't tell us as agents. They didn't tell even the people in Celebrity who worked here. And then it was finally figured out that up to a certain date, if you had already booked your cruise, you will get a credit and they will still do the test for you and things like that. Well, when this all came out, I was on Royal Caribbean, their initial launch of the Odyssey of the Seas and their naming ceremony, and that question was asked, are you guys doing the same thing as Celebrity? Is that going to be happening? And all the executives said, we never heard this. We don't know what you're talking about. We are a different entity. We run our business. Celebrity runs their business. Yes, we're owned by the same corporation, but we run us, they run them. And everyone said, okay. And then there was a big round of applause. And then today they announced that, yeah, starting January 5th, there will no longer be testing on board and you will have to pay for it. That didn't take long. So if you're an international traveler or you have kids under the age of 5 who can't be vaccinated who need to get tested to fly, or you're a Canadian traveler trying to get back, you will now have to get tested. Not only that, they will not be providing it on the ship. They say there will be options for you. They will let you know once you're on the ship. I guess you're going to have to ask for it to make sure when you get there. But if you're going on a 4 or a 5 day cruise, you only have a few days to try and figure out where to get your test in time for that flight back home. It's a whole lot of hassle. It really is, not being able to get a test on the ship. It really is a lot of hassle. But they are getting rid of that testing on the ship. They will only be testing people who have symptoms and things like that. They say you will be able to get a test at the terminal, you will be able to get a test at the airport, and from places nearby that they will let you know where they are. Of course, you will have to find your way there, you will have to get paid. They also say, by the way, they're a third party, they're not us. So if the test doesn't come to you in time for your flight and that's not us, that's them. You're going to have to take it up with them from now on. You remember what happened with me on my Celebrity cruise, where they lost my test and I ended up spending an extra 3 days in Florida at a hotel waiting for a test to come back, as well as had to get new flights to fly home. Well, guess what? It's not them doing the testing now, so that's on you and that's on the testing site. Good luck getting your money from a testing facility. Good luck. Because they say it can take up to 72 hours, but it's not a guarantee. So you're on your own. And that is why I completely disagree with this decision. But I'm a nobody, and I'm a Canadian traveler. And I've been on multiple cruises since the pandemic started. And this is one more reason that maybe it's time to pause. Maybe it's time for me to pause for a little while until things settle down, because they're just trying to make it more and more and more difficult for their loyal customers to get back. I have cruises booked with Royal Caribbean. I have cruises booked with Celebrity Cruise Lines. And I don't honestly know how I feel right now, but I feel again like I did with Celebrity. It's a bit of a slap in the face to Canadians and international travelers and those who need the test. I would even be okay with them saying, we're going to start charging you, but you can get it done on the ship. That way, it's in your hand before you step off the ship. And you're not panicking about the flights and panicking about other things. I don't know. That's my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think down below. Do you think they goofed up on the Symphony of the Seas, not testing that woman? Do you think the smoking in casino is really not going to do anything? Maybe you're happy about that if you're a non-smoker. And also, what do you feel about all the canceled cruises starting to go on in Europe? Will that come here to North America? Let me know in the comments down below. And until next time, have yourself a safe and a great vacation. I just hope you don't need a test.